frontier is defined as uncharted territory by land or ocean. Those who chart that territory tell a story. The past illustrates the blueprint for the present, how things are and how they've evolved. From land to water, we are challenged to border that new frontier, a frontier the outdoorsman knows like no other. Author Gary Lewis works his way along that edge of where discoveries, failures, and achievements have written the story of the sportsman.
Yes! Yes!
From state to state, continent to continent, the stories told create the foundation of the present, and they lay the framework for the future. Through the muzzle fire and on the stone are stories from the edge.
Water is the most important thing as far as Indians are concerned, 'cause that's life.
The past is written, the present is here, and this is Frontier Unlimited.
Oh!
I'm happy. I'm very happy. I'm a very happy man.
Debbie and Dan Getz of Warren Scout Mounts found themselves in Carbon County, successful in their hunts, a purification of their hearts. But this isn't where it started.
Yeah, here as muddy as it's been. The amount of snow.
I've hunted antelope before, but I haven't hunted them in the snow, and it's, for me it's usually in August or early September. What's going to change? What happens to their patterns when it snows?
Not a whole lot. Up higher up the ranch, where the elevation gets higher, the snow's deeper, and some of the antelope have started to move down a little bit. So we'll. It's pretty much all the same. Just cruise around, cover a lot of country in the pickup, and just look at a lot of antelope. And they're pretty easy to spot sometimes when we move around in the snow, just like any wildlife. But
Yeah.
we're almost surrounded by public property, so between the National Forest and some state and some BLM that the public can access, and so that really plays into our advantage.
Okay, so some pressure could drive animals in here.
The animals in, both deer, elk, and antelope. So we're really fortunate to have that advantage.
Yeah. They're not an antelope, even though we call them antelope, and they're not a goat, even though we call them goats.
Yeah.
In the moon of the drying grass, when the clouds were heavy on the Sierra Madre, wisps of snow illuminated by the lights in a few windows blew down the streets of Saratoga.
I took my tripod out because strange things can happen especially after the flights and long traveling. Better to check them and make sure they're on, and instead of checking them out in the field on a live critter.
Looks like I saw a big red-headed yeti down there.
I'm happy. That one was 2 inches high, just a little to the right. I'm all set, ready to go.
Half an inch high, half an inch to the right.
Okie dokie, Smokey.
There is one place where they say pronghorns outnumber the people, and it's called Wyoming. Antelope season had started in the second week of September.
Unsuitable for harvest.
Yeah.
Too small.
And now it was mid-October, and the pronghorn had been pushed around for most of a
How
month.
big is that buck? 13? 13? Yeah.
Dusty Shell drove the crew up into the mountains where they had seen bigger bucks prior to the storm.
Well, a couple of days ago we were up here cow elk hunting, and there was quite a few antelope still, but I mean the snowstorm had just was just getting underway. Now with the snow, it's looking like it's pushed everything down a lot lower, so we'll make a loop through here and just kind of scope it out. And I just want to make sure those couple of bucks aren't up here still.
Yeah.
The crew followed the migrating herds and ended up in creek bottoms, driving dirt roads and going in and out of rawhide gates.
No,
Nope.
his his cutter on the left side is completely gone. So just kind of a mountain goat looking.
Every time they spooked a small herd, it melded into a larger group.
There we go again.
But both of the ones are shooters.
There's some more over there.
Yep.
A lot more.
Until hundreds of pairs of suspicious eyes were alert to their intentions.
It might only be 100 yards. Or...
The Arapaho and the Shoshone believed a hunter must prepare his or her heart. Only if the hunter's heart was pure would the animal give
Right
its
there,
life.
about 500 yards from us. And they're just continuing to move around the hill.
For Dan and Debbie Getz, they were after their first antelope, to take haunches, heads, and hides home for the winter. For Lewis, North America's original fast food is one of their family favorite meats.
Man, that one in front is really booking.
What antelope do? I don't know. It's makes it difficult when they're so wild. Now they're 2 miles away already.
I think we should go to the next county, maybe.
We're gonna go over here and see if this group is a little tamer.
Okay.
They were already on high alert because of the truck, so they kind of knew what was up already.
When the second morning dawned, the forecast called for calm and warming, but promised wind by midday.
Yeah.
We've got a small group of antelope here, and one of the bucks is a pretty nice buck.
Quite a few does.
Remember, when you're shooting downhill, you gotta hold just a little bit lower than you would normally. So at 340, you might hold at 300.
But by the time we get crawled over there, it'll probably be right about 300. You comfortable with that?
Yeah.
It's pretty calm right now.
Yeah. That's one of the does. That's not the one. Might get him down in the bottom or something. We'll get everything worked around. Let's get out and skid her up to this brush here.
Down in a canyon, they stalked a big buck with a doe and a fawn amongst a large herd, with a screen of willows to hide them. Dan Getz had one opportunity.
Got him at 250 yards here. Or 249 if we want to use the sale price.
bullet went high. Wyoming was purifying the hunter's heart.
Clean miss. Never really stopped. Not used to the altitude.
Well, and off of the road, he's trying to keep them herded up.
There is one place where they say pronghorns outnumber the people, and it's called Wyoming.
Debbie, you got to change it up. Things aren't going according to plan. You just change something.
Okay.
You change the music you're listening to, or the way you part your hair, or you tie your left shoe instead of your right shoe. You know, you squint out of your left eye instead of your right eye, you know.
You're staring right at us. We need a decoy.
Let's try it.
It was Debbie's turn to try her hand. Through the gate and out into a meadow, they glassed a herd of antelope from the truck. And while they watched ahead, a lone pronghorn slipped under the fence behind them.
Spotted?
I'm gonna just stay in the truck.
I think I'll stay.
He walked up behind the truck, and Debbie eased her door open and took a rest as the animal drew alongside, 85 yards out. Lewis whispered to Debbie, "Take him." Debbie held the crosshair low into the pocket behind the foreleg and squeezed. Hit, the buck ran along into the sage, sliding downhill to its chin.
Oh,
Beautiful shot.
thank you.
That was good patience.
Was it? That was great.
We've had him running all over, and we can't get close enough, and then all of a sudden we get one that just walks up too close.
And I even checked. I did it all right. Yes! Yeah, change of luck here.
That's the way.
Yeah, the way to go.
That's the way.
Oh, let's go see my buck.
Nope.
Debbie walked up first and knelt beside the animal. For this hunter, who has taken 5 big game animals now,
Yeah.
it was one of the finest trophies with
Very nice
13
antelope.
and a half inch horns.
First goat, you said. Spent more time chasing him, and then
Yeah.
he dang near wanted to crawl in the back of the truck.
Yeah, it did.
Well, probably 3.5. Nice mature buck.
Underneath the jaw. He couldn't have come closer.
We were a quarter mile away. We saw the antelope. We saw you take the shot. We heard your scream. I knew since you got it.
Perfect shot right in the end of the heart. Right in the bottom of the heart.
It was Dan's turn again. Low in the foothills, just out of the willows and cottonwoods, they saw antelope moving single file, and there were more than a couple of good bucks with them. 275 yards, Dusty breathed.
Get right up next to him. Oh, here's a good buck over here.
Dan settled in. His scope dialed down to 6 power, took a half breath, and squeezed.
Just in front of him.
He was moving just as you were squeezing. It was nothing you could do. It was as good a shot as it could have been.
No, good a shot would have been dead.
Well,
Just shot just in front of him.
At that moment of commitment, the buck whirled left. The Nosler AccuBond bullet streaked downhill across space, time, and sagebrush, and passed right through the space that had just been vacated by a trophy antelope. They They drove, glassing into grassy meadows, stopping
The front
to
one.
inspect
Or
various
the-
bucks through the spotting scope.
The one on the right there, Dan.
Over there.
Dan, his heart as pure as Wyoming could make it, set up the shooting sticks, bolted around into the chamber, and leaned into his rifle. The antelope began to move, and Dan spotted it before it could gather itself for a second jump.
You got to do it in front of the FedEx truck too.
In front of the FedEx truck? Is that good?
That's good.
I'm happy. I'm very happy. I'm a very happy man.
Wow, that's a beauty, Dan. Oh yes, you should be.
That's a nice one, Dan.
Yeah, yeah.
That was last thing you did.
They walked up on the fallen buck that had given itself to a hunter. Dan ran his fingertips through its long mane and along the heart-shaped horns. Now that 2 antelope were in the skinning shed, Lewis emptied 10 rounds of the silver-tipped Nosler bullets out of the
I
Winchester
don't
box.
think that's probably.
We know where he is, and we can look at him from the other side later too,
Yep. And they might end up going back over there similar
doing what they did last night.
as they did last night.
For years, Lewis has been aware of Carbon County, Wyoming's propensity for producing big pronghorn. Maybe the trophy quality can be traced to minerals in the ground or superior genetics, or both. But the fact the large ranches act as incubators for the herds of antelope mean bucks can grow to old age. Instead of going back to the large herd they had hunted the day before, Dusty drove Lewis on a narrow eyebrow of gravel, where we had seen a large buck on each of the last 2 days.
I think when they go over, we'll go up just a little bit.
Yep.
And we'll just crawl out as soon as they disappear. They just went right off the rim here, and we're just going to get up here to one of these points.
This one was always on the edge of the greater herd, but kept himself aloof, except for 1 or 2 other animals.
Yeah, I think he just went right down and he's escorting that younger buck.
They had seen him enough that they could pick him out from a crowd, but Dusty seemed to have a sense of what this particular animal would do, where he would be at different times of the day.
350.
You can continue to walk.
Yeah, it has ceased to be the shot I want to take.
Yeah, no. Yeah, for sure.
3 animals were together on the long shadow thrown down this west-facing slope. A doe, a fawn, and a big buck. The same buck they had stalked with Dan on day 2. Dusty led the way to the rim, first on hands and knees, then down on his belly. He pushed his backpack in front of Lewis, threw up his glasses, and then called the shot. Lewis bungled the shot, and the bullet cut through the air on the animal's brisket. Lewis swung the crosshair way in front of the animal and squeezed.
Oh man. You put the pack here, and I laid down, and I could see my muzzle, if I rested on the pack, was going to hit these. The bullet was going to hit these rocks, so I had to hold up, and then I was shaking just a little bit, obviously,
And we're a little
winded, and I kind of drew a circle around him and squeezed at the wrong time. Then, as he starts to run, I'm figuring just over 200 yards. So I held this far in front of his body and squeezed the trigger. I was
Hold tight and give her plenty.
that far in front of his body. That was what it took. Wow, that is a fantastic pronghorn, a fantastic antelope. It's my biggest antelope I've ever killed. I can tell that without walking up to it. That's really awesome.
You've got a great set of cutters.
That was the one we came to get, no doubt about it. And we've been seeing those animals right here in this drainage, and that's why we kept coming back here.
There was no question this was the buck to take. With the sun low and the temperature cool, it was a good time to take care of the meat and keep it cool. They looked at hundreds of antelope, and Lewis found himself gauging the length of the horns relative to the head, evaluating the prongs and mass at the bases.
I hate to be the guy that walks up and measures an antelope, but I kind of... You know, as many of the big bucks as we've seen at least half a dozen really big bucks. We didn't have much opportunity to, you know, just that one look yesterday and then this one today.
And that's how they get
Big, yeah. That is so great. And same, 15 1/4.
That evening, as they sped out ahead of the storm, Lewis thought about the snow. When the autumn storms brought snow an ankle deep, it meant the prairie tribe's long-range hunts were over for the year. The Arapaho would have settled into their winter camps and stretched out the summer's hides and ate the prime cuts while preserving the rest against the months of the cold. We are not that much different if our hearts are pure.